I have a two-part question. One to follow up on that point. If you put our ability to manage or self-control on one side and our ability to innovate and invent new technology on the other, it's pretty obvious what wins out. So in your opinions, how much of the solution is going to come from us mitigating our personal use of you know, different sources of energy, reducing our carbon footprint, versus some sort of innovation for alternative fuels or carbon sequestration or some new technology to you know, push the greenhouse gases back out into the atmosphere. Whatever the innovation is, which do you think is going to win out in the end? What's it going to take to get us back to where we need to be? And the second part, to Dr. Doddridge, you had mentioned the tipping point. How much can we learn from Mars to look at an example of one possible solution or one possible result of an atmosphere that may have been pushed past the tipping point? What can we still learn from that to figure out, while we're trying to tweak what's going on in our atmosphere, what not to do in order to make sure that that doesn't happen to us?
Do you want me to take the last one first? It's an interesting point about other planetary atmospheres. Anyone that caught Joel Levine's talk earlier today said that there are greenhouse effects all throughout the solar system. You know, Venus is the runaway greenhouse effect. Mars, there's also an atmosphere on Titan. NASA and the university community are doing a lot of study in this. I don't have the technical acuity to be able to answer that question. What I can assure you is there's some very smart people out there are looking at this for a variety of reasons, including that. Mars definitely was a lot more like Earth before, and I think I'm not a subject matter expert, but I always feel that the key to predicting the future lies in the past in a lot of ways, and understanding that could be a good thing. So I recognize your point, and I think there are people out there that are looking at that, hopefully to produce a roadmap for our recovery here.
I'd like to just add one thing to what Bruce said, and well, I think we can learn some from other planets right now. We are in a situation right now, you may have heard about this in the news or whatever, read about in the paper, where we are, the observing system of Earth is essentially, has been used by the National Academy, has said is at a point of collapse, because it's been neglected over the past 10 years, and currently, especially with the Bush administration, has utterly neglected development and the deployment of new satellites and new observing technology. So as we go forward, we really have to concentrate. Well, we could talk about doing stuff at Mars or on Venus and so forth, on other planetary atmospheres. It's a lot more of a stretch to go out there and say, yeah, we're going to learn something that we can use on Earth, especially given the fact that our observing system for Earth is in such a dire need of I mean, not exactly today, but it takes 10 years to get something in orbit. Okay, if we started today on a new sensor, it'll be 10 years from now. So we're going to go through this period. We're going to have a relative dearth of information. And so we've really got to come back, and if we have questions on where we're going to put new investments in our meager resources, relatively meager resources that we are given to combat this problem right now, we really have to upgrade the observing system for the Earth and to put in new technologies as a way to help answer the question that you asked, so we can learn more about the Earth. And I think until we learn more, we won't know exactly what the best answer is and how we're going to mitigate it.
I think there's a thing or two we could say about will versus technology, if that's a way of putting this. Right now, we have technologies that probably within 10 to 20 years could at least reduce our carbon footprint by 50%. They already exist. It's a question of the will to put them forward. Solar is relatively mature. Solar power is relatively mature. What would happen, well, right now, you could look at, well, 5 years ago, the cost of buying a flat screen TV was huge, right? It's a very similar technology to a solar panel. Now, you can almost buy a flat screen TV at the grocery store for a couple of $100. Why hasn't this happened to solar energy? It hasn't yet, but there's no question that we could cross that same gap very, very quickly. The technology all exists today to do that. Wind power, it's all there. I think it's really a question of will and people saying we have to do something. I think, I'm sorry to think this, that things are going to have to get worse before people recognize that. This famine that we're in right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg, I fear. I think that food supplies and fresh water supplies within the next decade, we're going to see the poorest of the poor being very, very badly stretched. Hopefully, this would be enough to make people say, well, we've just got to rethink this thing, and let's walk away from oil. We're going to do it anyway. I mean, that's the bottom line, is we're going to do this anyway. We're going to transition from a fossil fuel-based economy. Whether we do it in a nice, friendly way that allows us to benefit from technology and development, or whether we're going to do it in a really ugly, nasty way in which we simply have no choice. That's the kind of choice that we have to make. And, use your will, write your congressman, vote, become very active, because it's your kids that are really going to know this.
I'm going to add one more point also, that because we live in a leading country that has contributed so much to what is the carbon emission into the atmosphere, in our hands lies the responsibility when we say to a developing country who just started being out of the dunk, may I say. And it's like, I'm just having a car, I'm just having a microwave, and you're telling me that I cannot do this while you've been doing it for 15 years. It's going to be in our hands to very highly effectively communicate with these people and provide to them the alternative methods, saying, you do not have to do the same mistakes that I did, you have better way of living. And from that comes is reaching out to the other cultures, especially the developing ones, and see what they have been doing for years and try to implement that in what we are reaching to them. So that's another thing we can come from.
And I just had 10 seconds to say one other point that I made at the last session. I've been at both of these sessions today. I was in Europe about 2 weeks ago, and I was just watching there on TV, and they're looking at the same sort of things. How are they going to get their alternative fuels? And in England, at least, they're importing a large amount of ethanol or grain from developing countries. And there's a real moral issue there, because now these countries are growing grain because they can sell it to the developed world for more than they can sell it in their own country for food. So the people in the developing countries are being deprived of basic food because we're sucking down more energy. And we're expecting them to develop it and give it to us. And so a lot of people in England, where this story was coming from, were raising this moral question. Is it right for us to be drawing our energy and not changing our way of life, and by doing so, depriving people in developing nation not only of a new economy, but of basic food? So there's some deep issues that have to be addressed. It's not just energy use in and of itself. I mean, it's basic human needs that are not being addressed in some places because of our insatiable, it seems, need for energy.